Hello, and welcome to episode 378 of RPG Fan's, well, mostly weekly, but currently bi-weekly podcast of many topics. I am your host today, Zach Wilkerson, and today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VI, but we're going to be talking about the second half of Final Fantasy VI, sort of from the floating continent onto the World of Ruin, and then through to the end of Kefka. So before we get started with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel, starting with Lucas.
Hello.
And Lucy.
Hello.
And Aleks.
Hey, I'm back.
Hello. And Ben.
Hi.
And so we have all at least come close, very close to finishing Final Fantasy VI, and at least YouTube the endings, which, you know, no shame in that. Almost everyone on this podcast has done that at some point, because I can tell you it's a lot sometimes to play games on top of doing everything else that you have to do at the site sometimes. So, but we're going to be talking about sort of, this game changes a lot in the second half. It changes in some really interesting ways. And I said the word special a lot in the last podcast. Those of you who are listening probably remember that. But I do genuinely think that one of the things that sets this game apart from other games in the genre and in the medium is the second half of this game, and some of the non-linearity it gives you, and it also gives you just enough direction in some really interesting ways. But I want to, before we get to the World of Ruin, we hadn't quite finished up last time talking about the end of the World of Balance. I think we had gone up to the floating continent, and we had gotten up to that point. And I want to kind of talk about the events of the floating continent first, because I think the events of the floating continent are so critical to what makes the rest of this game as interesting as it becomes. So as those of you who have played it are aware, Kefka basically moves the warring triad around to create what's called a floating continent, where like the world sort of like a portion of the world lifts, and he goes up there. And the idea is that he and Emperor Gashal are going to harness the power of the warring triad to take power over the world. And it feels like a final dungeon in its construction. It feels like a final dungeon, at least this time for me, in its difficulty. It felt like a final dungeon because like I had encounters turned off like for like the first like half of this game almost. And when I got to the floating continent, I paid for it. When I got to Atma weapon, I paid for it. It was very challenging. So let's talk a little bit about the events of the floating continent and about people's opinions about that before we get to talking about sort of the openness of the World of Ruin. So what does everybody think?
It really hits you like a ton of bricks, because suddenly this game goes from a lot of political intrigue to suddenly there's a very good chance that this whole world is going to crap.
And it does.
Yes. Spoilers. Wait, no.
Yeah, and it's also like quite interesting how it like just lets you bring 3 party members. I can't remember if there's like an in-game reason for that, but you only get 3, and then you see immediately once you land, you see Shadow just lying there, and you pick him up. It might be even like your first time getting him into the party, depending on how things went earlier in the game. And it just suddenly this character that seems so peripheral to everything is suddenly seeming like much more focalized. And he gets some really interesting moments into the dungeon, like some real hero stuff from kind of this ninja that was supposed to be kind of this elusive, very selfish, dangerous figure.
I mean, not to be the well actually guy, but I'm pretty sure in Thamasa you have to have him as well, right? Is that accurate?
Oh yes,
okay.
That's
very
the one where
briefly.
You have to. Yeah.
Very briefly, and at that point, after you complete the one mission that you do with him, he has a chance of leaving your party like 1 out of 16 for like 1/16 out of for every turn. So basically, he is a very unreliable character.
Yeah, clearly has like his own motives, his own things going on, and then during Floating Continent, some very, very surprising stuff comes from him.
Ben, what'd you think of the Floating Continent first time around?
Yeah, I thought it was definitely like maybe the hardest part of the game up to that point, and even harder than a lot of the stuff that comes after, which I thought was good. It definitely feels very like climactic. And you almost feel like, I think if you were playing this for the first time with no knowledge, you might think, oh, this is like the end of the game. And I think that makes the World of Ruin part, more impactful, because it's like, oh no, there's actually all this, another half basically to the game that's much different, and how it's structure and everything. So, I really enjoyed it. Compared to some of the content that was before, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, and I could be wrong about this, and some listener, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when I first bought the game, like I had a map that came with the game, and on one side it was the map of the World of Balance, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I turn it over, and I'm like, oh, it's a map for the World of Ruin. What does that mean? And I was like, I don't know, 10, 9 when I got this, and so I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, huh. That's weird. But I still, when I first hit this moment, like I thought for sure this was the end of the game. Like it felt climactic in a way that was important. And like Kefka being there felt appropriate. And I was like, oh, all right. And like the Emperor is going to like turn to be good against like his evil underling Kefka. And like, no, Kefka annihilates Gestalt immediately, which I think is a really powerful and intriguing moment. And then like, as you see these lasers floating down, like, and destroying the world, even as like it almost feels like the World of Ruin twist in video games is like the Star Wars twist at the end of The Empire Strikes Back nowadays. Like everybody who plays this game probably already knows about it. But I think even as a person who now is playing through it for like the 6th or 7th time, it still feels really powerful and really impactful. And like seeing like as the world is like crunching and collapsing and cracking apart, like seeing like these sprites like fall into the earth, like that is a level of darkness that I think is almost like, even as a person, and I can say this because this is going up well after my review of Final Fantasy 16 is going out, it influences the game up through the most recent entry in a lot of ways, and I think that's a really interesting thing, like that it's willing to go that dark. And very few games, I think, when it's not pixel art, are willing to go as dark as this game does.
Yeah, that's true. To like represent that kind of thing in kind of full 3D graphics would not only be extremely expensive, but like extremely dark to look at. And I still personally think this is the most interesting representation of like an apocalypse happening like during a game that like I've still like seen to this date, just because like the whole color palette of the world changes when you're in the World of Ruin. Like suddenly those like greens and browns are replaced by this like brown and red kind of hue, and like then the overworld music is just like this really like slow, kind of gritty. Of really,
even before
really well
Searching
done.
for Friends becomes what it is, which I think I like almost as much as Terra's theme. Like whatever, I can't remember what the name of the one you get at the beginning of the World of Ruin is, but like it's so appropriate. It's so good.
Yeah, it's like very oppressive. It starts with just like kind of like the sound of the wind going that you would hear at like the very beginning of the game, kind of when Terra, Biggs, and Wedge are kind of overlooking Narsh. So it's like an interesting throwback to that. And just like we could talk more about the music in this game, but yeah, just and the fact that like all your party members are gone, everything just really feels like hopeless. You're on that little island. It's just an incredible representation of like an apocalypse happening.
And before we move to my favorite sequence in the game, which is that moment on the island, did everybody save Shadow this time?
Yes, gosh darn it.
Of course.
Because I know some of us, and I'm not naming any names, Lucy, but I know some of us, the first time they played this game, did not save Shadow. Because those of you who don't remember, maybe who are listening to this and haven't played for a long time, at the end of the floating continent, like you beat the boss or whatever, like everything happens, like Kefka fires off his lasers, starts destroying the world, and like you have to escape the floating continent, and it's way easier on the Switch version because you can just turn encounters off, and you can sprint as well. That all makes it way easier. But you get to the end and it's like, hey, do you want to go? And like Shadow was behind earlier trying to like make sure Kefka didn't actually destroy the world. And they're like, hey, you want to go? And you're like, yeah, I'll go. And Lucy, in fairness to you, the first time I played this game, now granted, I was 9, so it might be why, but I jumped when I got to it. So like I never got Shadow in the second half of this game, but you have to wait until there's 4 seconds left, or maybe it's 3, I don't remember. Of course you remember now.
Oh, trust me, I remember.
And
it's really
if you jump, Shadow's dead, man. That's like some Fire Emblem stuff there, man. Like, that's awesome that they even allow that to happen in this game.
But not only that, if you get there with less than 4 seconds to the ship, you automatically jump. It doesn't even give you a choice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's wild. I did not know that. That's frustrating. Everybody else made the right choice, though, right? They waited for our boy Shadow.
Oh yeah, and I also just think for some more context, like with these pixel remasters, we have like the very generous like autosave function, but like back in the day, like the time would be like ticking down. Like your last save point was like before you fought Atma Weapon, before you watched like that cutscene, and so if you're like there's a lot of pressure there to be like, oh my god, if this time runs out and I don't get Shadow, like I got to do all that over again.
Not only that, but if you correct me if I'm wrong, but before in the original, if you open the menu at all to change gear, the timer would still count down. Now in the Pixel Remaster, it stops when you open the menu, and it's like, okay, I could use that little breather.
Yeah, I mean, like, I actually think that's one of the interesting things that makes the Pixel Remaster in some ways slightly weaker. Like, I think that sequence lacks the urgency that it had originally. Like, and I remember as a kid playing this game, like, I remember feeling like that sequence was incredibly urgent. And here it's like, oh, I can sprint, I can turn off encounters, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I got there with like 1 minute and 45 seconds remaining this time.
It feels like, in a lot of ways, the Pixel Remaster definitely feels like a game that was made with people who've already played the original experience, the original in mind. So that's like one of those things where it feels like they traded convenience for, the original intent or feeling that they were trying to convey. And like, I think probably when they were making the game, back in the SNES days, they would never have considered allowing you to like have that moment where you can pause and like not have the timer ticking down.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But people are older, and the developers, people at Square are older, so you got to go to the bathroom more when you're old, so you need to be able to pause.
Well, and having that option is good for like accessibility reasons and lots of other modern conveniences as well. But it's definitely, it lacks the impact in a certain way. But that gets into that whole, Elden Ring has to be hard conversation.
Yeah. I definitely don't want to open that can of worms ever. But I do think that there is something to that. Like it's a different experience one way or the other. Like for me this time, I was just like, I don't want to deal with that. Like I've done it before. And I think Ben's right. Like I've played this game a bunch of times in the original iteration. And so like I had like AP turned up to like 4 times experience the whole time. Cause like, I don't want to grind out Ultima. Like I will, but I don't want to. So like, it's just like everything just happened so quickly for me this time. But I do think that it, and the game itself, I think, is a little bit easier, but I think that even without it, like the ability to sprint in that section alone, makes it go significantly faster. So it changes the experience. And so I think it's an interesting conversation to have, about what these Pixel remasters have done to the experience. I know people usually complain about like the extra dungeons or whatever. I don't really care about that. They're good like in Final Fantasy 2, I think. And otherwise I think they're just like filler. But that does lead us to the collapse of the world. The world collapses and everything ends. Like you lose, the bad guy wins. It feels momentous, even now, because it's not a thing that happens frequently, even now in video games. And so you find yourself a year later, having been asleep for a year, which I'm not really sure how you would do that, like without IV fluids on this place. But you find yourself
playing. Don't think about it too hard.
I know. Whatever. You find yourself as Celeste waking up a year later on an island out in the middle of the ocean, being taken care of by her mentor and the engineer Sid, who is also falling ill as time is going. And you wake up and you're not around anybody, and everybody else who originally washed up on this island had already committed suicide. And it just puts you in such a place. And one of the ideas is that you're supposed to play kind of sort of a mini game on the island, which is that Sid is falling sick as you get there, and you're supposed to help him. But it is an incredibly difficult mini game. Apparently, I've only tried to do it once. It was my first time playing the game, and I was able to do it successfully somehow, which is luck. Which is save Sid, and then he stays alive. But if you don't give him enough fish or the right kind of fish, he dies. And he just dies. And then Celeste has a moment, which I'll talk about more here in a second. But I have to ask, did anybody here save Sid?
Yes.
I did.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I am not a sociopath. I am going to try and save people. Gosh darn it.
You killed Shadow. Stop.
I let Sid die. And I've saved him in the past. Honestly, like during my last playthrough of the game, like around like 10 years ago, and it just didn't have like that same kind of narrative impact that letting him die does. Like, and honestly, like if you're playing the game for the first time and you don't like look any guides, like there's like basically no chance you're gonna save him.
True story. First time I played this game, no guide, I managed to save him. I don't know how. It was just pure luck.
Oh, wow.
I have no idea. Like,
it literally is to an extent luck, because you don't know what kind of fish are going to show up. That part is random unless you like have some way to manipulate it.
And not always do the right fish show up. Like sometimes you'll
Exactly.
go and the only way to reset it is to grab a fish. So you'll have 4 slow fish. So no matter what, you're going to backstep. And it sucks.
And takes forever.
Yeah, I couldn't be bothered with the fishy minigame, so Sid went away.
You know what? That is a totally legitimate way of thinking about it. And I think that most people think that narratively, the game is more interesting. And to me, like, it feels like almost canon at this point, because I've done it so many times this way, to not save Sid. Because when you don't save Sid, like, Celeste is like alone, isolated on this island, and she walks up to a cliff and she throws herself off of it, which again feels like the kind of narrative moves that people can't do anymore. Like that it would be like a thing that would like explode on Twitter, like, oh, why didn't you give us a trigger warning or something like that? Like it's narratively so powerful in communicating the despair, and it makes sense with who she's been previously. Like Celeste is struggling with who she's been previously, and like sort of the evil that she's done. And now she's alone on an island. But I do have to ask, like, why didn't Sid just tell her about the raft to begin with? They could have gotten on it a while ago.
Yeah, and how did he leave that letter after he died?
It's like, I'm going to die. Let me toss this out of my very purple wetsuit.
Is this another one of those Titanic door situations?
I mean, when you're following up with that, if you do save him, why doesn't anybody come get him and take him back to the mainland afterwards?
He just sits in his bed for like the next 10, 15 hours, however long it takes you to beat the game.
just don't think about it too hard.
He doesn't even sit in bed. He stands in front of the bed going, I'm all better now. That's the only line he says. So I fully understand that it does like undercut the message, but it's one of those like, there is so much wrong going on and you're so alone that you want this little bit of positive. At least that's the way I always thought of it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I like the music there too, like Celeste's theme. I think that in the Pixel remaster, whatever negatives I have to say about like the way it changes the game design, like the music is so good in the Pixel remaster. Whew. And I felt like this time as she was coming off the cliff, it hit like a truck. And I think it's always been like, to me, the most powerful moment. Like, it's so brave in terms of storytelling that it's willing to do that, and willing to go that dark in a way that, I just don't think video games can do nowadays.
Yeah, and for it to be so powerful with just like the 16-bit sprites and just like the little effects they do, like as she's falling, and the music is just like, really, really powerfully done.
Yeah, one of the words that I kept coming back to as I was trying to think about talking about this game this time was cinematic. There are a lot of very awesome cinematic moments, cinematic musical moments where they, the score and the scenery, even like the camera movement, which at a game at that point in time was complicated, is really impressive for evoking exactly what they want.
Yeah, there's like kind of like musical motifs at play using like character themes and like bringing those in at like specific timings. I even feel like there's almost like a visual motif with Celeste kind of looking out left top of the cliff to like her in the opera scene, kind of looking out left, tossing the flowers. Like it did remind me of that as well. So yeah, just like this kind of cinematic kind of visual language and audio language. It's just really good point.
So you're saying spirits within exists because they cut their teeth.
I mean, I wasn't going to go there, but
you know, I am a bit of a spirits within defender, but I will not be doing that today. What you guys are talking about, though, it reminds me of like the earlier moment with Madwin and Tara's mom. I can't remember her name. And like how like in like a minute of game time, like I feel like I felt that in that minute of game time, the relationship between those two, and the ways in which they're moving around each other. And it plays around with pixel art in a way. Like in pixel art after this game, 3 years later is basically gone. Like it still gets used occasionally now in like retro games, but it definitely feels to me like in some ways, like I think that there is more beautiful pixel art, like Chrono Trigger. I think Dragon Quest VI, if anyone's seen the Super Nintendo version of that. Mm-hmm. Obviously Suikoden 2 or Breath of Fire 4 uses some pixel art on the PS1. But in terms of like using it for storytelling purposes and being willing to experiment and not knowing if it's going to land and doing something different and new, I think this game does that really well.
The amount of emotion you get out of the little finger wag, the one pixel going back and forth, and how much that evokes. It's just like so cool.
Yeah, just one little animation and suddenly you know exactly who Edgar is as a character, it feels like.
And he's the one who uses it the most. And it's how you recognize him when he shows up again.
Exactly, yeah.
That's true. Which, speaking of, I guess we can kind of move on to the rest of the game now. But, honestly, like our conversation is going to be really open from this point. Because those of you who have played Final Fantasy VI know that after this point, the game opens up dramatically in ways that I think make it really interesting to engage with. Like, I remember playing it without a guide, like as a kid. Like, I remember having to really work to find all these little nooks and crannies. But playing it as an adult, I can see how the NPCs consistently tell me what to do and where to go. And if I'm paying attention, like I know how to do these things. Now, like I played the game enough times, like I don't need to talk to anybody. Like I'm like, as soon as they tell me to go to like Mount Zozo, like I'm not doing that. I can go to Narsh. I'm going to go grab Mog. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go grab Gao over in the Veld. And so you have so much freedom. And so I kind of want to just like kind of open it up to like your favorite moments, like in terms of like the sequences that you liked the best, in terms of like also like how you feel about the World of Ruin versus the World of Balance, because I feel like a lot of people prefer the pacing of the World of Balance, but like to me personally, I think so much of the great storytelling of this game is buried in the World of Ruin, that it's interesting because like originally I read an interview recently, like they weren't originally planning to even do the World of Ruin. Like it was like they were ahead of schedule and they were like, hey, this game feels kind of short. Well, what should we do about that? Oh, let's do this. And then they make the World of Ruin happen. And like, I think that is such a magical way of talking about art. Like it's just like an accident. Like the first person you get is probably Sabin. And then you can probably, you technically only need to recruit 3 people, Edgar and Setzer. And then you can go fly to Kefka's Tower and take him down. But that's not how probably most of us played. So what are some of your favorite moments from the World of Ruin?
I have to say, once again, it's Edgar showing up as Jared. Or Gerard, or however you're supposed to pronounce that.
I think it's Jared because it's an anagram for Edgar. So
yes.
Yeah, he's really fooling everybody with his.
Yeah, he's all like grayish now.
I love how Sabin is there and he just lets him get away with it because Sabin doesn't have to be there. He's technically optional, but like, come on.
Well,
that's actually
Sabin's a bit of a meathead, so maybe he really doesn't know.
Really But I will have to say that Sabin has some really fantastic moments in the World of Ruin between letting his brother get away with it, and then if you have Gao, you can go find Gao's dad, and him basically being Gao's foster dad, being like, no, we have to make this absolutely perfect. We have to get you dressed up perfectly, perfect manners, and show him you're awesome, only for it to slap in his face. But it's there's something about Sabin's little run through the world of Ruin that just makes him an essential character for me.
Well, even before that, like, you first meet him and he's just holding up an entire mansion by himself. Like, we were talking about, like, last episode, just like the way that this game manages to incorporate like very like serious emotional moments and like just pure silliness that's only possible with like kind of this 16-bit pixelated aesthetic. And Sabin holding an entire house while you like go in and save a kid is just like another really good example of that. But yeah, just regarding the world of balance versus the world of ruin, I think I made this analogy in my Final Fantasy ranking, but like it feels to me like Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2 just rolled into the same game, just kind of separated into two different halves, because like Mass Effect 1 is just like this like well-paced story with like interesting characters and like it's just like well-paced, well-told, and just like kind of like this fun adventure. And then Mass Effect 2 is just like kind of more this non-linear thing. You're just given kind of the suicide mission as the objective kind of near the beginning of the game, and then it's just like recruit your crew, get ready, and we're going to do this thing. And then the actual storytelling ends up being very character-based in a really cool way. It kind of drawing on the different characters from like the first half of the game, or in Mass Effect's case, the first game itself. And just like kind of Mass Effect 2, you even get like kind of these loyalty missions for a lot of the characters. Like reuniting Gao with his dad is a kind of like loyalty mission. Bringing Sabin to reunite with his master, where he learns his like strongest move, Phantom Rush. I mean, it's like only like a 2-minute segment, but it feels like this kind of substantial character building moment nonetheless.
It's the first thing I do as soon as I get the ship every time I play this game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just such
so
a good
game-breaking.
Oh my god. And also now not even having to do like the real kind of Street Fighter input.
You can just do like auto battle, and he's like, oh, he just does it immediately over and over and over again.
Yeah. To be fair, you could always do the inputs that way, even on the original version. It just didn't imply it the same way. Didn't make it as obvious.
Yeah, I always thought that I had to like take my finger and kind of like move it in a circle like very smoothly around my controller. And last time I played it before this was on an emulator, and that did not work very well, which I wish I had known that.
I fully admit that actually just before we started playing this, I ended up getting the Hori controllers for the Switch because they have a dedicated D-pad on it. And that made it so much easier to input for this.
Yeah, Sabin's really good.
Yeah, I remember playing it on an emulator, and I think like another trick you were technically able to do with the original game is instead of doing like diagonals, you just repeat the input before it, so it would just be like left, up, right, down, left, up.
Well, that's what I did this time. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that they brought the Duncan back. Because I remember last time
I thought he was dead.
Yeah, well, he was supposedly he was dead. I remember talking last time about how I thought that part was so weird, and then he's like comes back and it's like it never happened. It's very strange, but
like, sorry, I killed your son. Can you teach me my final move now?
Yeah, it's very odd, but I mean, it's cool. I think it makes a little more sense. The way that it happens in the world of Ruin for him to teach him like the final technique and everything. But it was just funny. I didn't expect that at all.
And Duncan's got a cool cape for some reason. I always thought that was kind of weird for a martial artist to just be walking around with a cape.
No capes. Though the other reason I love the little Gao sequence that you get if you you have Sabin and you take him to go see his dad is that everybody gets their fashion sense insulted. As you're going through the
I totally forgot about that because I didn't do that this time, but it's such a good moment.
And he ends up wearing like a duplicate of Setzer's suit, which is like the only time you see this little sprite, which is like completely superfluous, but it's great. And then you're just like, aw, they really are his foster dads.
Yeah, it's a very, very wholesome scene that kind of just allows like it really just brings all the characters you have together and allows you to kind of see them interacting together in this more lighthearted way. So it's a very cool scene for sure.
That actually is something that I really wish there was more of in the world of Ruin. Like that scene is one of the best ones, but I think And the obvious reason is because of how they would have to program it with, at that time and not knowing which characters you were going to have in your party at any given point. There's just a lot of scenes where I know, like, we brought up recruiting Strago, where, he literally walks up, has 2 lines of dialogue with Realm as long as you've got her, and that's the entirety of the recruiting. And there's so many characters that I wish you just got to see more little moments like that moment with Gao, of them coming together, especially because at the end they're talking about this like whole found family kind of feeling, and that is one of the better examples, the scene with Gao. But there's a lot of other characters that don't really get that moment.
Yeah, so a lot of the characters feel like pretty superfluous, I think. There's just so many of them, and it's so hard to like develop like even just like a more like normal or manageable cast of characters, much less like the huge cast that you have. I mean, they're neat as like especially the 2 characters that you can get in the World of Ruin as like a novelty, or something unique gameplay wise and everything. But it is a little bit of a shame that they don't really they don't all feel like fully fleshed out characters, I guess.
The thing that really made me think about it was there's the scene at the very end right before this fight with Kefka, and everybody goes around and says, why they're fighting. And I kind of had that realization of, it feels a lot like when you go around at Thanksgiving and like half the people kind of give the cop out, oh, well, friends and family answer.
I've never heard that described like that, and that is amazing.
I hadn't ever thought about it that way. And
you're giving me really PTSD right now, okay? Because I hate that crap.
Because, I mean, a lot of them would have the same answers that they would have given at the beginning of the game. They didn't actually change or grow at all from when you recruit them to that point, and they're concerned about the same things. And I love all these characters. I just want more.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. And like, kind of just like going on that note of just like wishing that there was more like unique kind of character interaction based on like who you have in your party at a given moment, even like who's kind of like at the head of your party. Like a lot of just like the World of Ruin dialogue will just like like how like when a specific character is talking, like it'll show their name at the top of the text box. Like for the World of Ruin, there's no name, you just get like generic dialogue. So it would be nice even like if there was some like individualized character dialogue based on like who you have as your party lead, and make it feel more personal also, like kind of based on like who you want to be your party lead. And yeah, like it's definitely kind of like the weakest point of the World of Ruin is just like kind of a lack of characterization at a lot of points, just kind of working with the assumption that who knows who's going to be in your party.
I mean, the one benefit of having Edgar as your head of party for parts of the game is that he gets a 50% discount at the item shop at Figaro.
I mean, that is a good reason. It's interesting that you guys say that, because like for me, and I think the criticism is totally fair. But it's never really occurred to me, because like I am always sort of attracted to the moments where I think the character development is really strong. And I think there are plenty of moments that character development in the second half of this game is really strong. And I think honestly, and it's one of the earlier things you can do in the World of Ruin. And it's always like one of the first things I can do. Like I get Sabin and then I go and I hang out with Terra. And I think Terra's character development in this game in general, like I know like there's supposed to be like no main character, but like honestly, like when we're thinking about character development, Terra is the one who develops the most by like a pretty wide margin. Now, granted, she ends up right back where she started, helping the returners, whatever. I understand your point on that. But like, I think that seeing where she was in the World of Balance and the difficulty she went through there, and then like her finding a purpose in Mobliz, and like the fact that the first time you try to recruit her, you can't, I think is really, really compelling personally. Like even today, I think it's really compelling that she goes and she gets housed by this, like, I can't remember what the thing is called. Well, what's the name of the monster?
Funbaba.
Yeah, Funbaba. Yeah. She gets absolutely destroyed. And then as time goes, she recognizes that in order to help her found family, like she has to do something about it. And I think that's really strong storytelling. Does everybody else feel good about the Terra sequence at least?
Yeah, I think you're right that even if like maybe plot wise she still ends up back where she started at the beginning, I think from her own character perspective, like in terms of her own agency, it's very different. Because at the beginning of the game, she's literally a slave, and then everything that happens after, she's kind of just being like kind of trucked along by the other characters and the returners, and you do have some input in that, but it feels very much like she's just kind of along for the ride. And after, protecting the orphans and Moblis, I think, she has that scene earlier with Leo on the airship where she's like, I don't, know, how can I really be human? Having this kind of existential crisis, I guess. And him, saying, no, you'll find, people that you love and your reason for being. And then you do see her find that. And so from that point on, it's more like she's doing all of the, the things. She's on the journey to defeat Kefka because of her own reasons, not just being like pulled along by all these other forces that want her power or need her for, her role to play or whatever.
Yeah. And she also is the character who in the end has the most to lose if things go wrong. It feels like, for me personally, because, she has all these people who are basically dependent on her back in Moblis. And you also have the fact that if magic completely disappears, she might completely cease to exist.
Yeah, no, just to be clear, Terra is one of the characters that is more dynamic, and I didn't want to imply that she wasn't. Before the hate mail starts coming in. I think that Terra's and like the whole scenes with Locke and Celis, some of the stuff with Cyan and being able to put his past behind him, all of those characters definitely are more at the forefront of that. There's just some of the others that don't get that spotlight moment, that don't get that attention.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's very much like an unevenness in terms of like who actually gets like these kinds of fleshed out recruitment / like loyalty missions versus something like Strago, where it's just like, Grandpa, why are you in a cult? Oh, I don't know. Let's go back to the airship. Like that's definitely like a valid criticism, that one in particular. But
one of the other ones for me that's always I love Shadow's characterization throughout it. We talked a little bit at the beginning about him getting that heroic moment. And, when I was a kid, I loved Shadow because he was an edgy ninja. But once I found the dream sequences and you learn more about his past and you get that whole sequence, which I don't think we've brought up, but since this is the spoiler cast, the fact that he is at least heavily implied to be Realm's dad is a thing that is never really... It's explored from dream sequences of his past, so you, the player, know it, but the characters never actually get a chance to talk about it.
Well, yeah.
And then he decides that even after you save him, decides to...
Yeah, without ever getting a chance to reconcile, without actually getting a chance to address any of it. And
I forgot how it's in the ending sequence, and you're just like, wait, what are you doing? Why aren't you? What? I spent that time saving you. What the heck?
You killed him again.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show like kind of what an interesting character he is throughout the whole game. Like he's just always like so elusive, both in terms of his personality and in terms of like actually trying to get him in your party. Even when you like first discover him in the cave in the world of Ruin, like still you don't end up recruiting him. You end up like going back to the town where he's kind of resting, and suddenly he's gone again. And if you talk to an NPC, you find out he goes to the Coliseum, and then you can finally recruit him again. But yeah, he's just like this incredibly like tortured figure that just does not seem to like even want like a future. It's a really interesting character that I don't think has been replicated in a similar way in any other RPG.
I mean, no, I agree. I think that I think this game had replay in mind and like sort of finding secrets in mind. So I think about even like the Gao sequence that you're talking about or the Shadow sequence, both of which I think are really strong. Like they're things that I honestly can't remember if I found them the first time I played the game. Probably not. I know the Shadow sequence because I didn't really use him. Like I had like one party that I pretty much used the first time I played this game that I never saw. But like for me, like it's like as you're saying with Shadow, like from a gameplay perspective, like him coming in and out of your party becomes part of his characterization. And I think that it uses the gamification of the game, for lack of a better term, to do characterization in ways that nowadays, a lot of times, even in something like Final Fantasy 16, which is a brilliant game, like they just do it directly. Like it's just like, oh, like this is just like a TV show that you get to like do some fights in between. And I think that it's cool that they do it in a way that it's like it's hidden in the same way that his past would be hidden, and you getting him or losing him is part of his characterization. Even like the sequence where you first get Setzer, and I don't think Setzer is super well characterized in this game, but the sequence where like you're walking down those steps and you're getting those memories of Daryl, and just like how precise they are in those moments, like I think is really powerful and moving. And the fact that you're moving down those steps, kind of getting back to Lucas's idea of like the camera, and it's like so much about like him like descending into his memories. Like I think there is so much powerful storytelling here, sort of hidden within this sort of simple game.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of just like having that. It's a really weird passage that going down that stairs, because it doesn't actually feel like you're in a place anymore. It's just kind of like this black background, and you hear that variation of Setzer's theme that you don't hear anywhere else in the game. And really, he's kind of like a scumbag as a character. Like the way he wanted to like capture Celeste and like felt like he had like ownership over her and things like that. He's not like a particularly like good character at all until that point, but then like there's just like kind of this hint of humanity that gets developed there, and yeah, it's a very memorable sequence.
I wish Daryl was a playable character, honestly, because little we
she
get
is.
of her.
She's go.
That is my favorite.
Is this yeah?
It is.
I was on GameFAQs in the early 2000s. Thank you very much. For the record, listeners, that is just a fan theory. If you want to go find out about it, you certainly can. I actually don't believe it at all, but it's a fun thing to theorize about. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry. Or don't. That's fine.
How do we even follow up from that? But yeah, I guess I could talk about kind of my favorite recruitment / like loyalty mission in the World of Ruin, which is Cyan. Because like that's another character that I think is treated really well throughout this whole game. Like everything that happens to him in the World of Balance is like absolutely tragic, just like a really, really tragic figure. And then in the World of Ruin, you kind of like come across Miranda again, the town, and you see like you're kind of like visually cued to go to this house because there are like pigeons around there, and you go. Find out that like somebody's getting love letters, and you end up following the pigeon to Mount Zozo, and there's Cyan just kind of living as a hermit in a cave writing these love letters because he's clearly still really broken up about losing his family. And so you kind of get him to like overcome that trauma, help the person that he's writing letters to overcome their own trauma of losing a loved one. And then you end up, at some point, if you find out about it, taking him back to Doma and sleeping in the inn there. And you see these little 3 demons coming out, and they say they want to take his soul. And they kind of just hop into his little sprite body, and somehow your party ends up doing the same thing. And suddenly you're in this like weird LSD, sorry, dreamscape.
I mean, same.
I mean,
fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it is LCD depending on what screen you're using.
Yeah, there you go. This is the Pixel remaster after all. And you kind of just have to literally battle his demons for him to rescue him. And after doing that, you get a sick sword, you get sick new moves that are actually usable in this version of the game.
Indeed.
And just really love that whole segment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sequence is excellent. I just wish you had a little more warning. Like, even like the last time I played this game, which was, I don't know, like maybe a few years ago, like I went into that sequence like not really remembering, and like I had to grind inside of the dream in order to be ready to fight the bosses because I kept dying. I think that's like the one part, like as a kid, like I think I almost gave up on this game. And it gets like a little bit of that, like, 16-bit design. But yeah, I mean, I think that otherwise, besides that minor quibble, which this time I went in totally ready and like I obliterated everything.
The beginning of the sequence is pretty hard too if you don't put the right character in the right slot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's Mog has to be in the last. Yeah, I always put Mog in the last slot so you can just start with the Moogle chart.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
If you don't know that.
I had Celeste, I think, or Terra, one of the one of my main characters. So I was fine this time. But yeah, in the past, like I think last time I think like Amaro or something. And let me tell you, that sequence is not easy if you're playing as Amaro.
I have to admit, I did not use Amaro at all.
Good call.
This time around, I did kind of break the game, getting one particular rage that basically has almost a 90% hit, and once it takes place, the enemies never actually hit you ever again, so you just wail on them completely. It's great.
Is that the magic pot rage, or
no? It's the Flesia, or it's one of the. It's the only way you can get it is you fight the flowers that are in.
Oh, those guys, yeah, in the realm sequence, right?
Yeah, and it's completely missable. And I had found it like. Not this time, the last time, and I was like, oh my god, this makes everything so much easier. And it kind of breaks the game, but it's fun in the same way because you get these characters, these enemies just basically hitting themselves to death.
I think we talked a little bit last time about how breaking it is part of the fun.
I mean, like every single time, like I go into like this time I was like, I'm not going to worry about stat manipulation. I'm not. And then like, I'm like, wait, I just leveled up and I didn't have magic +2 on Sabin. Oh, what? I have to reset right now. I'm like, I don't need to do that, but I did anyway. Like, I can't help myself.
Well, he really needs it.
I'm a min-maxer at heart. I wish I wasn't. I think it's an unhealthy thing, but I definitely did it. But yeah, it's a great sequence. Anybody else really like the Cyan sequence? Because I certainly did.
I want to know what happened to all those silk flowers that he made. He collects them, but then we never see them again.
And they're not in the inventory.
I know. We get those random books that he has lying around that don't really do anything.
And that clearly didn't do him any good, because he has the book about simple machines, but he still struggles with the button in the end sequence.
I got the feeling that he was doing that on purpose, though.
Well, don't forget about his book, Bushido in the Bedroom.
Oh, that's right. That is right.
I forgot about that. I wish I still forgot about
it. Ready to get back on that horse.
Oh my god.
Stop. Oh, Ben, what was the sequence you really liked to the end of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say the going to Mobley's and getting Terra and that whole sequence, I think is definitely the most impactful of all of these. I think there's a with the ending, since we're mentioning that a little bit, the fact that like Katerin like has the baby like, and that's interspersed with like the end of the game and them escaping, I think is just kind of like a nice thematic like moment of like, there's it's like new life or whatever for like a new beginning kind of, so, and that kind of being established before in that when you meet Terra and the orphans and everything, I just think it's a cool kind of tie-in towards the end. So it's probably my favorite part.
Yeah, and I forget what those characters' names are exactly, the ones that the other adults that are kind of living with Terra, but it's like a very, very like adult kind of themed segment of the game. Like it seems like they're having like some kind of like domestic disputes. They're not sure whether to even like have a child. It's like it's really like interesting thematic development. And then actually seeing that the baby was born at the end of the game is a really nice way to tie everything up and kind of just show that there's hope again in this world, you know.
From what I understand, it's actually they're not meant to be adults. They're supposed to be in their late teens, those two. And they're the oldest.
I mean, in JRPG parlance, that means they're basically ancient.
Yeah.
Every time I see a character in an RPG who's older than like 35, I'm like, are you dead yet?
Oh, don't say
like
that, please. Shush.
One other sequence, a couple of sequences I quickly want to talk about before we move to the end of the game. There's a sequence, we haven't talked about recruiting Realm, but I think that sequence is super creepy. And like, not because of like the house that you walk into, because like, it's like, you find out that there is some person who wants like a painting to be correct. I can't remember all the details. They're not important or that interesting. But like Realm is the person who's been recruited by this very old man to be in this very private room at the back of this mansion. And this time I was like, wait a second. I don't like anything about this. Please stop. Anybody else creeped out by that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Ozer's...
Yeah.
I do admit that when I first saw Ozer this time around, I was like, oh my god, it's Hedonism Bot from Futurama. But it is very creepy that Realm is just sort of like, la-di-da, I'm in a house with no lights. And this creepy old man watching me paint. Somebody call child services.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not really sure if that's like the intended reading or not, but it definitely is a very like strange scenario.
I don't think so, but it is real weird. Yeah. Like, she seems like she's genuinely trying to help him, and like we're supposed to feel bad.
Yeah,
for
it's
him,
like more of like a artist and like patron kind of thing is how I took it, but it is very bizarre.
I mean, like, Edgar hits on her early in the game, so like this game obviously doesn't have a great sense of like the fact that she's 9, and it was worse in the original translation than it is in Pixel Remaster. So
I was going to say they adjusted that in this translation.
It's still not good.
It's not great.
Yeah, that part stood out to me, and it's interesting to know that they changed it because I don't have any experience with the original, but even in this, when he said that, I was like, why is Edgar like? Why is he talking?
I think in the original he says that he wants to date her when she comes of age, which is worse than like she's going to break hearts, which is what I think
that is what he says.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Says this time.
But it's pretty rough.
Yeah. It's they I mean it's a JRPG, so I feel like that's a problem they have with just in general. You have with like that kind of like ladies. He's kind of portrayed as like a ladies' man character, and I feel like a lot of times those characters kind of dip a little too far crossing the line into that. So
yeah, I think I remember even in the World of Balance when you first are in Figaro Castle, I ended up talking to this like child NPC, and she said something along the lines like, "Oh, King Edgar said he'll marry me when I get older," or something like that. I don't know if that's verbatim, but it's close enough that stuck in my head.
I mean, like, out of context, it's like, it's like a cute thing that like an adult says to a girl just to like, I don't know, for whatever reason, just like make her feel better about herself. But in this case, Edgar has a pattern of behavior that I find troubling. So yeah.
Again, let's call child services.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, is it supposed to be funny? Like, is it supposed to like, I don't know. It's just very uncomfortable.
I don't know, man.
I mean, it is supposed to, I don't know if it's supposed to, but it is interesting that when you talk to all the other girls in Figaro, they all talk about like gently turning him down. So you get the sense that he's a lovable loser more than anything else.
I was thinking about
that makes it worse.
I think but now going back to it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Edgar's one of my favorite characters. I'm not going to lie, but this is
I understand.
Bad.
Yeah, I noticed they play with that at the end as well. At the during the ending sequence while they're all in the airship and it's kind of shuffling them around. There's a point where Celis is standing at the railing. Edgar walks up and then she kind of like sneaks away. And then while he's not looking, Realm switches in.
Oh God.
And then he's like kind of like freaking out for a second, and then Sabin comes up and is like shaking his fist at him.
I don't think I've ever noticed that before,
Yeah,
but that is some incel energy for days. Oh God. Oh. Continue,
so how I read that was that like Celeste ends up slipping away and going back to Locke, which also like Edgar, isn't Locke your boy? What are you doing? Like calm yourself. But then Realm goes up and she ends up doing like a little like finger wag. So like she's kind of like telling like Edgar kind of like, no, not a chance. You're not getting anywhere with that. That's how I read it anyways.
That's slightly better.
That makes sense, I think.
Still
makes him a bad bro instead of...
Well, yes. we would rather
else.
that.
Yeah, we would indeed. But, you know, one of the things that I always think is interesting here is, like, a lot of times people will say that, like, Locke is one of the main characters of this game, but realistically, like, Locke is one of the last characters you're going to get. Like for me, like, when I play through this game, like, the Phoenix Cave is like one of the very last things I do. But I do actually like that sequence a lot. And I like that it splits your party and like it sort of like presages the fact that Cultists Tower is going to be something where you have to have multiple characters at least semi-leveled. And I like that sequence, and I like the stuff with Rachel at the end of it. And I never have Locke in my party, so like I've watched the YouTube video of like his relationship with Rachel that you learn in the World of Balance, which I think makes it much more powerful, which I think is a legitimate way of criticizing this game. Like I feel like at that point, like it's like, oh, Locke likes this girl. Like we haven't really ever heard anything about her until now. Not really, sort of, kind of, but not really. But I do think that sequence is pretty cool.
I just want to know, how does his girlfriend turn into Magicite?
IDK?
She doesn't. He brings the shards of Magicite back, and it happens to interact with her? Question mark?
It's just one of those, because I fully admit that I had played Final Fantasy Theatrhythm before I had played Final Fantasy VI, I think. No, actually, I had played it immediately afterwards, and when I first played it, and that one of the things that I always get pissed at Locke is that in the Theatrhythm games, the first thing he does if you're playing Terra is he goes, "Yeah, you beat a level. Here's some Magicite. It's your dead dad." And I'm just like, it's revenge.
I have not played that particular version of Theatrhythm. What?
It's the very first Theatrhythm. Like if you could get characters giving you bonuses at the end, and for some reason, one of the bonuses at the end of that was of the Terra theme was Locke going, "Hooray! You beat the level. Here, have Magicite of your dead dad.
Here, have Madwin."
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I love that. No, I love that. Oh my gosh, I have to go play that now. I just want to see that sequence.
I mean, it's like 5 seconds, but at the same time, I'm just like, Locke, you were on thin ice already.
Regarding Locke being the main character, one of the things that I've always thought with that is it feels like Terra is clearly kind of the central point of the story in the game. Like the story kind of revolves around her, but she, like you were talking earlier, she doesn't really have agency. And it feels like Locke is kind of the one who is used as the guide through the first half of the game. Because even though Terra is one of the main characters, she's not, or is kind of the central character, she isn't in your party for a lot of the first half of the game.
Yeah, Locke to me feels like the most like traditional like JRPG main character of like the main cast. Which is kind of interesting because all the other characters I feel like are so different from that kind of like self-insert kind of style character you'd see in a lot of games. And not that he's necessarily exactly that, but he just kind of plays that role in the story. Like he has the like, you know, the love interest. He, you know, has this like tragic thing in his past he's trying to get over. He just kind of fills a lot of those bits while not being very central to the story, which is kind of interesting.
Especially since people now complain about Vaughn in Final Fantasy XII when Locke is a similar
He's very
role.
similar, I think, to Vaughn, yeah.
And Vaughn definitely gets some unneeded hate, so yeah.
Yeah, but I think he does play a necessary role in the story just to you know, keep I think it's good, especially because I think Tara's story, she can't really have those typical, like, I don't know if you want to call them like Hollywood kind of storytelling moments, and so you kind of have that with Locke instead of her, and I think that, you know, it has its place, you know, so it you still kind of have some familiar tropes while also getting to have Tara's more unique kind of story.
Yeah, and I think it feels interesting that Locke ends up inevitably being one of the last things you do in the World of Ruin, because like on the one hand, he's during the World of Balance, when you're actually like controlling him, he seems like kind of really looking to be like moving on from kind of his trauma with Rachel and everything, and like he's at the same time he's also projecting that protective energy like hardcore on Tara and Celeste. And then he's just sort of like missing in the World of Ruin, and Celeste is kind of like, in a way, the protagonist of the World of Ruin half, because you start as her, and really kind of what's keeping her going after she ends up still being alive after throwing herself off of the cliff is like encountering that bird that has Locke's bandana. And so this kind of ended up being like her motivating factor to keep going. It's like to find Locke and to have that chance of a future with him. And but meanwhile, at the same time, which is really interesting, Locke is just kind of absent. He's become fully dedicated and obsessed with the idea of like reviving Rachel. And you kind of have to go through that really big dungeon, pretty much like the biggest dungeon in the World of Ruin besides Kefka's Tower, and you find him at like in the deep parts of that cave, and he's finally done it, and then finally he gets kind of his like conclusion and overcomes his trauma. Then it's very hinted at that he and Celeste are going to be able to have some sort of future together.
Well, it's also interesting, like in the ending credits, she goes back for she drops the bandana and goes back for it at the risk of her own life. And sort of tying that the beginning and the end of the World of Ruin altogether.
Yeah, and when she's like about to fall, and then like Locke kind of, his sprite literally like slides across the floor and like grabs her. I thought that was actually really powerful. I thought that was really well done.
So I'm glad you're bringing up the ending because, you know, I think it's about time that we talk about Kefka's Tower. We've talked about all these different stories, and I think that Locke's story is really interesting and gets to some of the power of the storytelling in this game, how it does it so efficiently. Like, we don't see him for huge swathes of the end of this game, and I think his story is still powerful. But then everybody, assuming that you've recruited everyone, which you don't have to, but I fully recommend that you do, because storytelling, I think, is efficient storytelling is what this game does best. You enter Kefka's Tower, which has basically has three different paths, which means that you have to break your party up into three separate units. And I can't help it. Cyan's been so useless for so many years that I still left him on the bench this time. Even though I know he's less useless, he still said goodbye to me. And Umaro always. And so like, I create my three parties, and I move through Kefka's Tower. How'd you guys find Kefka's Tower this time? I actually found it maybe a little bit more challenging than normal, just because I was way more underleveled than normal this time.
Yeah, I also went into it underleveled and actually had, I think, a lot of fun because of that. It ended up being really challenging. I only had, I think, only the three main mages had Ultima for me, so Celeste, Terra, and Realm, and I had one of them in each of my three parties. But man, I just love the idea of this final dungeon. I think it's still one of the best final dungeons in any RPG. Like, the whole idea of like that this game is kind of like an ensemble cast rather than focalizing on like a single main character, and the fact that you have to like make use of like pretty much every character that you have in the game. You have to like kind of think about like the ways they're gonna like synergize. You can't necessarily just have like put all your eggs in one basket and have like all your best characters kind of together. You kind of have to think of how you're gonna divide them across the three parties. And then actually like moving through the tower, you have to like one party will get stuck, and then you'll have to bring in another one to be able to progress. So it's just like such a brilliant way through the level design of Kefka's Tower to actually enforce this theme the game has of like all of these characters like finally getting together and being able to work together and defeat like the final evil like together. It's still incredibly done.
Yeah, it's definitely, it has that same kind of difficulty spike, I feel like, that the Floating Continent does, where it is definitely a last dungeon. It is definitely harder than most of the rest of the game. And like, I still always run into the same problem, which is I put most of my good characters that I've leveled up in 2 parties, and then I put whoever is next best in the 3rd party with Mog, so they don't have to do random encounters. But then they have to fight bosses.
Yeah, I was going to say, that makes the things pretty challenging.
And I always do it that way, and it's a terrible idea.
I always end up dying at least once. Doesn't matter how high level my characters are. There's always something I screw up, and I always die at least once and go, oh, nope, gotta go back. Let's balance this out a little better.
Yeah, just like the whole, like, because especially like before we had the experience boost function, like just preparing for Kefka's Tower was such an ordeal, such a grind. And it still feels like that in a lot of ways, even using the boost, because just trying to like get all your characters to like a decent enough level so they don't get like one shot. But yeah, it's just like it really feels like something you have to like prepare for. And I used to just play this game all the time, kind of focusing like a main party, like having my 4 main characters and going through the world of Ruin with them like as soon as I got them. And this time I was throughout the entire World of Ruin section, I was switching between my characters to try to like get them all ready for Kefka's Tower, like from like as soon as possible. And it was a really interesting and different way of experiencing an RPG. Just like actually like switching between party members constantly, and it's something that's just still like very unique to this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is unique. Other games have done it. Like Suikoden 5 makes you do it a little bit, but like those of you who have played Suikoden, like the way the leveling works in those games, like you have like 2 battles with somebody and they're going to gain like 20 levels if they're under leveled. So like it feels different there. But here it feels like a fundamental part of playing the game. And I think that it is actually a barrier for some people. And Ben, I hate to call you out. Like, I know you didn't quite finish this game. And you were really close from what I hear. So like what was the challenge here? And I think it's a legitimate challenge.
Yeah. I mean, part of it was just time. I didn't have a lot of time to once I got to the end. Just to make it through. But I also think like the game, there are a couple of points where the game does something similar in the World of Balance. Like there's that one part where you're defending a character and you have to like make like 3 separate parties and put them in different lanes or whatever to defend them from the soldiers coming up. And so, but other than that, like the game doesn't really prepare you or indicate that this is going to be what you're going to have to do. So that, I think is maybe a little bit of a flaw. But on the other hand, I think it's really interesting. It's the first time where I really felt like I had to think about who's in my party, having them, their abilities like synergize with each other in a way that they're going to be able to get through, and complement each other. And I think that's good for like a final challenge, to do that. So, yeah. But it's definitely, a more difficult part of the game. But I think it's definitely worth it. And if you're going to do it, the last dungeon is definitely the place to do it.
No, I think that's fair. And I do remember, I think the first time I played this game, again, when I was very young, I went into Kefka's Tower and I realized that I was like, oh, you have to have 3 parties. Oh, I'm not doing that yet. And then, like I backed out. And then like I went and did like a bunch of grinding. Like the first time I played this game, like I think like every single person in my party was like level 70 or something, which is, for the record, those of you listening, and you probably know this already, excessive overkill. This game is not that hard. But I was young, and like my grandparents, like my grandma, the last video game she played was like, I think Final Fantasy V that she talked to me about. And she played it for like 270 hours, man. Like I was raised in a grinding culture, because I'm from Akron, Ohio, and that's who we are. But like, like it was like, man, I'm not I don't need to do that. But yeah, I mean, like, but I think that I like the challenge. But what I especially like, honestly, is the final battle. Like, I love the conversation with Kefka. I love the epicness of the rise up. And there was a previous Retro Encounter episode many years ago at this point with Slow-C, Steph, and I about Kefka specifically. And we talk a lot about the philosophy of Kefka in that conversation. And I love the way that he crystallizes nihilism, or nihilism, or however you want to pronounce it, so effectively in that conversation. And I think that, at least for me, like, I felt like, I know that, like, some people so far have criticized, like, hey, like, found family, like, how can we be found family when we haven't changed at all yet? But I still think that you've spent enough time with most of these people, at least like 8 or 9 of them, that, like, I felt like I knew them. I felt like it hit that, like, the bonds between us, which was developed in the world of balance. And I think that the bonds that these people have in the world that, you know, has been created, or that they're trying to deal with, like Locke or Setzer, whoever that they've dealt with, I think is interesting. And I think that it gets to how they're fighting for each other. And, like, I think that so much of it happens silently, that I think you could argue that, like, hey, it could be developed better. But, like, you literally scoured the whole earth to find your people, and you found them, and now you're here. And you didn't have to do that. You could have hung out. You could have done whatever you were doing, but you did it anyway. And, like, placing that and pressing that up against who Kefka is, and, like, his philosophy has merit. Like, I understand his point, that people will all die no matter what they build, but, like, what we build matters. And, like, that's the sort of thing that, like, gets me, man. Like, I love Nier Automata because that game gets to that, and this game gets to it too, just in a different way. So, like, and I love the ending sequence too. I love the credits. I love escaping Kefka's Tower. So what did you guys think of the ending?
The music.
Yes, the music, definitely. I also have to say that, you know, there was that whole conversation with Kefka as he's firing lasers all over the earth, and I'm going, guys, can we hurry this up and, you know, get to not letting him destroy the world, please? It's just like, you're going, okay, you know, we should get fighting now. Those lasers are getting pretty close to the people. Can we stop?
Yeah, no, that fight, the 4-part fight with all of the build-up going up to the top is amazing. It's one of the few really challenging sections, you know, where you actually have to plan for several different things that can happen. I mentioned in the pre-show that I actually ended up dying on my first attempt on it, and the reason for it was real simple. I didn't have a way to prevent mute on my characters, so I kept getting interrupted mid-cast because, like, 3 of the enemies there would end up muting you. And it's like,
I'm so used to just ultimating that fight away, I don't even know he did that.
yeah, exactly. And I kept having, so whenever I tried to heal, and I ended up swapping into, like, my 3rd tier party by the time I got to Kefka, which I've never had happen before, but it was just like, no, you actually have to think about this a little bit and prepare for it, unless you're high level and have Ultima on everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all played a lot of JRPGs, I think, but so we've also killed God a lot of times, but just the representation of, just like we already talked about it, that the panning up throughout, like, the different phases of the fight, like killing God has never felt so epic than with that, like, pan up all the way to, like, the top, and, like, into, like, kind of like that heavenly looking reddish background is just so good, so well done. And that song, of course, Dancing Mad, with the orchestral remastered arrangement, is just, that hit hard.
The fact that Dancing Mad has, like, what is that, 4 movement? It has a separate movement for each step up the ladder.
It does.
Mm-hmm. And it cycles until you transition between the stages, and then moves to the next movement accordingly, which is the same thing that it does in the, 20-minute ending sequence as well. Yeah, it's
a great
phenomenal.
final boss fight. I mean, even though I can't remember what it's like to have that fight be challenging, because I do just have, I put 3 spellcasters, Realm, Celeste, and Terra, who have Ultima. I have them use it over and over again. I have the gem box in one of them, so they fire it twice. And then I have Sabin, who just fires off Phantom Rush or Bum Rush, whatever you want to call it. And I just obliterate him almost immediately. Like, it's still, even with the fact that I find it insanely easy with the little bit of preparation, it feels so epic. It is like, it doesn't ever say that you're killing God. Like Breath of Fire 2 is my first real kill God RPG, but this one feels like killing God, and it's awesome.
I just love also for the visual that you're seeing all these different aspects of like the worst of humanity sort of mashed together in this giant,
so Dante
growing.
Like, I was like, as an English teacher, like Dante's Inferno references, yes, thank you very much.
It's such an amazing visual that just even as some people complain, you know, you're not getting the way it was meant to be looked at with the CRT experience, but it's just, even in its true pixelated form, it's just so well done and such a wonderful put together image that really makes this battle feel like it is the end of.
Yeah, the complexity of all of the sprite work in that, especially, which the HD makes it, or HD version makes it look even crisper. You can pick out little details that you might not have seen the first, 30 times you played it on the SNES.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's excellent, and the final sequence is also excellent. Like, you're escaping Kefka's tower. We've talked about a lot of different moments that happen during that, and then there's this concern that because you've killed Kefka and you've destroyed the Warring Triad, that like magic is going to disappear from this world, and like, what does that do to Terra? And I love that it boils down to a choice for her. Like, it's a choice of like, how connected are you to humanity? And at the beginning of this game, she's not connected to humanity, but then in the end, she is. And I think it's a beautiful ending, honestly. Like, I think that it doesn't explain too much. It resolves the concerns that are important, and I think it is beautiful as a result.
I love that they have a solely unique sprite for Terra at that very end, when she finally gets up and is like, yes, I have something to live for. And she pulls off her ribbon and is just at the tip of the falcon, ready to,
that's a stunning shot. That's like cinematic, as someone said earlier. It's great.
Yeah. I am curious. Has anyone ever played through this without recruiting Terra?
Absolutely not.
I was curious about that too, just how that would change the ending. I never even looked it up, to be honest.
Yeah. Like, again, the fact that you don't actually have to recruit everybody makes me kind of curious how that would play out, because I feel like it loses a lot of impact without that.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see. I think once we're done recording, I'm going to go look it up on YouTube, because I'm sure someone has. Like, I know I was talking to Alana about this before recording, and she's like, "Did anybody do like a 3-character challenge run?" I'm like, "No, we're not sociopaths except Lucy."
Shut up.
Okay, so I know we're running long, but I do have one final question, and it's an important question. And that is, if you were going to rank Final Fantasy VI amongst the oeuvre of Final Fantasy, where do you think it falls?
I mean, you know my answer. It's at the top for me, and just for like kind of all the reasons we've been describing, just like the kind of what it manages to do with its characters, not through like kind of overt storytelling and exposition, but through mechanics, like their special moves, how each character has their own like technique that you can use. There's a bit of characterization in that, through the world of Ruin just being kind of this non-linear loyalty mission kind of approach, where everybody to different levels of detail and success gets to kind of have their character developed in kind of a more personal and intimate manner. And just like kind of the whole ending sequence, the final dungeon, the final boss, and kind of that whole ending, and the way it incorporates kind of and makes use of the unique visual language of 16-bit sprite work. And Nobuo Uematsu's just unbelievable musical score and like use of character themes and motifs and things like that. Like even if it doesn't hold up 100%, like just the pure innovation and the fact that nothing else really offers this kind of experience to this day just makes it an unforgettable game to me that I'm always happy to return to. So that this just having this podcast was just a great reason to jump on board, buy that Pixel remaster, and re-experience this game.
That is a compelling argument. What about it? What about everybody else?
I really do have. I know that it's partially nostalgia, but this game has such a high place in my heart, not just in the Final Fantasy series, but in general, of just such the unique storytelling, the way that each character is unique in its own special way, and that there is so many little nooks and crannies in this game that are so highly unique. It's a game that I have replayed multiple times, and I'm probably going to replay again because it's just, there's so many wonderful moments in it. And recording this podcast has made me confront some of the bad parts of this game, but I have a wonderful nostalgia screen, and it's going to help me keep playing this over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
I totally understand. Lucas, what about you?
I mean, this is one of my favorite games of all time, even if I do have some criticisms of it. I am somebody who is willing to examine the things that they love. I still think it's one of the best Final Fantasy games. It's, if not my best, or if not the best, then definitely still top 3. And like, it has a few flaws with the mechanics being a little too simple or gameplay being a little too easy sometimes. It has some problems with the characterization, but all of that stuff is just stuff where I would want more of what it does well. Like, it sets such a high bar for itself with certain points that I feel like I want to hold those other parts up to that same standard, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense to me. I pretty much agree.
Yeah, it's like Lost Odyssey, right, Zach?
No. My full thoughts on Lost Odyssey recently got published on the site, and I was being nice in the podcast, and I was like totally what I thought about the game on those final thoughts. So go read them if you want to see how much I actually hated that game.
Yeah, I read that this morning, and I could just feel like my blood pressure going up from all the salt emanating out of your words.
That's fair. So Ben, you're one of the new, you're the new player among us, and I really want to know what you thought.
Yeah, I have to say, someone who hasn't played like half of the Final Fantasy series, and the ones I have played are very different, I feel like, from this game. I did come away enjoying it, and I'm really glad that I played it, because I think that there's a lot of ways that when I was playing this, I recognized that other games kind of that would come later took from this game. And even if some of those games maybe executed on those concepts better, there's just so much like packed into this game. And I think that's partially like it's one of its strengths and maybe one of its weaknesses as well, is that it never really gives you a chance to fully immerse in all of the gameplay concepts that it puts in front of you or develop those fully. But it's such like a wild ride, I guess, from start to finish that it's hard to really feel too negatively about it. I don't know that I would say it's like super top on the Final Fantasy games that I have played. It in a lot of ways it's not. It doesn't offer a lot of what I come to games for. But I think the things that it does well, it does so well that it kind of still left like a positive impression on me. The music is beautiful. I like that it's experimental in some of the ways, especially like the little set pieces where the gameplay is changed up and it's using these like RPG mechanics to do something different that you wouldn't normally see in a game from this era that I thought were really novel and interesting. And then I think it's really cool how the game opens up in the second half with the World of Ruin, and just gives you a very different tone and feel to everything and lets you kind of go and explore on your own and, recruit the characters you want and leave behind the ones you don't. I think it's a very like brave thing for the game to do, especially at the time it came out. So I came away, more positive than I was initially, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. I mean, like, I know that nostalgia glasses totally color my ability to reflect on this game, and I love that your perspective is new and specific to a new experience. And until maybe about, for me at the time of this recording, we're recording on June 6th, or June 7th rather, I would have probably called Final Fantasy VI my favorite single player Final Fantasy game. 12 is close. And I think that's about it. Like 4 I love probably the most, but like I know that 4 is just a fine game. Like it establishes the tropes of the genre, but it's not really special outside of that. I think in today's climate, I just finished playing Final Fantasy 16, and again, spoiler alert, it's the best single player RPG I've played in many years, and is stunning, and everybody should go play it. So it doesn't match up to that. But Final Fantasy 16 actually pulls a lot from Final Fantasy 6. It has a lot in common with it. And I think that some of the strengths of what 16 is doing are pulled from what 6 created. And I think it's really important. And I still think that the way that it creates such an epic scope in such a miniature medium, I think is really great. And I think it's really important to the genre going forward. And I mean, like the most important thing to me right now is that I had a blast talking about it with you guys, and hearing a varying perspective and learning different things about a game that I've been playing for almost 30 years. I don't want to talk about how old I am. And it was a blast. So I hope you guys enjoyed the recording as well. But regardless, I really appreciate you guys joining me on the podcast. So thank you, all 4 of you, for chatting about this game.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, Zach. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. So let's talk about what is coming up, which, to be honest with you, I don't know yet. As you probably gathered from what I just said, we are recording this pretty far ahead of when it's going to actually post, which I did partially for a lot of reasons. I'm going to be traveling to England at the end of the month, and I knew Final Fantasy 16 was happening. And so we're not sure. I know one thing I can tell you is that I think that the next 3 episodes will be the last 3 that are hosted by me, and that Slow C will be returning at the beginning of September. I'm not sure what schedule he's going to use or for sure when that's going to happen. But that is way more exciting news than anything else I can tell you. So that's good. That's good for everybody to know. We'll do 1 game journal and then 1 off topic before he returns. But what those things will be, I do not know. Summer Games Fest is tomorrow. There's a lot of different things that I think could happen that might change what we're going to do, especially since we're recording so far ahead. So that's why I don't know yet, to be honest with you. And also Final Fantasy 16 is really good. So took up a lot of my time recently. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us, retro@rpgfan.com. Slow C still checks that with some regularity. You can also get in touch with us lots of other ways. You can get in touch with us on Facebook. You can get in touch with us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, YouTube, Twitch streams almost every day. Scott is also an absolute machine. So if you want to find RPG Fan on the internet, it's not that hard. You can also find us as a shop. We have an RPG Fan shop. You can find a link to that on the site. If you want to support the site, or if you want to just support some RPG Fan merch, which I have much of at this point. Other ways you can support the site are by listening to our 2 other excellent podcasts. One is Random Encounter, which posts every 2 weeks. And it's about current events. It's about games we're playing now. And you can also listen to Rhythm Encounter, which posts the other Monday, those every 2 weeks, and it is about RPG music. You can also review us, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, however you like listening to podcasts, however you're listening to this podcast right now. You can do that again next time it posts. But before we leave, let's let you know how to get in touch with the rest of our fine panel, starting with you, Lucy.
If you are contacting us on social media, I am one of the people who is reading that. I'm also found almost everywhere as Jess Idris, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, the like. And I'm also the demon. You can summon me using a variety of ancient magic.
My Ouija board is ready. Aleks?
It's just through email, Franiczek@gmail.com. Check the spelling on the website.
And Lucas.
You can find me on Twitter and YouTube at Rafgal, RAEFGALL. And I don't think I mentioned it last time, but I release Let's Play videos daily. So lots of content there. If you enjoyed listening to me talk about this game, you can literally watch me play the whole thing.
That's excellent. Now that I know that, I'm going to go check it out, just so you know. And Ben.
Yeah, so just email for me as well. You can email me at benloganlove@gmail.com.
Perfect. I like that so many of you are not super active on social media. Others of you are very active on social media, which feels like a very 2023 thing at this point.
Say the two people who are on the social media team are very active on social media.
Indeed, you are. And the others don't have any, which I applaud all of you. For me, I am actually kind of active on social media, but you can't find me there because I teach and there's no way. So the best way to contact me is zachw@rpgfan.com, emailing me, or you can find me on our Discord. I'm not on there very often, but if you DM me, I will see it. Zach W on our Discord as well. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you listeners, and thank you for talking about what for me is maybe a slightly nostalgic driven favorite, but nonetheless one of my favorites. And thank you listeners. Good night and good luck.